Welcome into the Men Are Forged podcast. I'm your host, Cartwright Morris. The Men Are Forged podcast, we're about forging men into high-performing leaders. We do that through story. What you'll hear on this podcast is men's life, how they became leaders for the service and the benefit of others. If that's something that you're interested in finding more about, go to menareforged.com, and you can actually sign up for your free coaching session today with me to discover more about how you can become a high-performing leader. So go to menareforged.com. Now, today's episode. All right, welcome in the Men Are Forged podcast. Got a great guest today, Brian Gallagher. Brian, it's great to have you in with us.
Thanks for having me, Cartwright. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so what my guests don't know, which is really interesting. I mean, clearly you have a clear American accent, but you are coming from Amsterdam.
Yes, sir.
Which that's a first for me, so that's good.
Okay,
I have a
nice.
guest from. I think I've interviewed somebody in England, so I don't want to say this is my first Europe interview, but just for my guests, what's it like to live abroad?
Yeah. I mean, I like it. It's nice learning a new culture and being acclimated to a new culture. A little colder in Amsterdam than I would have chosen otherwise. Yeah. I'm here because my girlfriend got a job here about 8 months ago or 9 months ago now. The process to get a visa or like on the way to residency was pretty straightforward here. In the Netherlands, it's easy for Americans. It was even easier for me because I have a partner that's European. So, but I, in terms of like getting set up that way, pretty simple. I mean, everything is really straightforward here in the Netherlands, and everything works the way it should. I mean, you definitely have gone to countries, or I've gone to countries where like things just don't happen the way that I guess as Americans we expect them to happen. But the Netherlands is not like that. Everything is super efficient. Everything's on time. Everything works. Everything is pretty fast moving and intuitive. And probably one of the best things or the easiest ways to acclimate, or that has made it the easiest to acclimate, was that everyone in Amsterdam speaks English, like literally everyone. There's no urgency to learn Dutch. And I may, if I wasn't trying to learn Italian at the same time because of my girlfriend. So trying to do two languages at once and picking up another before I learned hers probably wouldn't make her too happy. So I want to focus on Italian. That may be Dutch after that, but it's been good, man. It's a nice change. I always wanted to live abroad. It was kind of one of my bucket list items to live abroad somewhere for at least 6 months. So kind of checking that off checking the box on that one. So I'm happy. Yeah,
that's great, man. And, I mean, obviously I don't know the culture very well, but, there's some of the Dutch friends, are they rubbing in your face that they got to beat us pretty good at the World Cup?
No, actually, none of them have. I'm surprised.
Really?
That one of my buddies is a huge soccer fan and used to work for this massive Instagram account that's purely focused on soccer. 433. It's got like 50 million Instagram followers. He used to work there, and no, he didn't say anything to me. I haven't seen him yet, so maybe that's why. We actually got back. We got back from the States that morning, so I didn't even watch the game. I was exhausted. Yeah. I couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just imagine as an American, I know you lived in New York, so I mean, the Boston Red Sox and Yankees. I mean, when your team beats the other team, you tend to let the other, especially if you got a friend who's a fan of the other team.
For sure, you let them have it. Yeah, let them have it. I'm a Phillies fan though, just to throw that out there. I'm from Philadelphia. Yeah, I didn't. That was like the first question a lot of people asked me. They're like, "Oh, you're from Philly. You're going to become a Mets or a Yankees fan?" I'm like, "No, I will not."
Yeah.
Stay with my hometown teams, yeah.
There you go. Man, y'all had a tough loss recently. Yeah. So, yeah. But I won't hit on that.
No worries.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we really want to just dive into your story, Brian. What did you grow up in Philly? Is that kind of your hometown?
I did, about 15 minutes outside the city, yeah.
Outside the city. Okay, and how would you describe your upbringing?
I would describe my upbringing as middle class, kind of worker, blue collar community. All my family kind of fell into that kind of category. I grew up in I would say what we didn't have in money, I had in support and love. Like I feel everything that I did, I felt incredibly supported. And I guess you kind of take that for granted until you talk to people that didn't have that or had like rougher relationship with their parents. Like I just did not have that. So I'm very fortunate, and I could even say privileged coming from that situation, even though I'm not talking about money.
Yeah.
That's just such an important thing as a kid. And you don't realize it until you're older, until you come across people that didn't really have that. So I would describe my childhood as like wonderful. I had a fantastic childhood. So I feel incredibly lucky. Yeah.
That's great. I don't want to give too much away to my listeners, but if you check out more about Brian at simplemanguide.com. A lot of his story is leaving the corporate world and how to do that. And he coaches people to help lead that and kind of, go off on their own. So so you said your parents were pretty loving, supporting. How are they in the midst of that transition when you left a very stable job in New York City?
Man, the first two, I got let go from my job, just to kind of throw that out there too. So it was a little bit of a shocker. I wasn't expecting it, but luckily for me, I was already planning my escape. So I had a fitness studio in the works that my business partner and I were getting up and running. And the decision came that one of us had to leave our jobs to kind of get the studio in a place where it was ready for our grand opening, which was going to be April. And I was going to leave my job on March 3rd after my annual bonus check hit. I knew the date. And about 10 days before that, I got let go. So that made the decision for us really easy. It was like, I was already going to go anyway. I was older. I had more money saved. It was like, okay, I'll do it. I got let go. My first two calls first was to my girlfriend, my then girlfriend. Yeah. And the second was to my mom. And just the nervousness that came through when talking to my mom. And I knew it would be worse when I got to my dad, because it's just like, it was just well, you don't work, how are you going to make money? And my dad's like, well, how are you going to pay your rent? Like just total, almost panic. Yeah. And even though I was kind of shocked or surprised that it was coming a little bit, I actually said to a colleague that day, I was like, my review is later this afternoon. I'm like, I'm 75% sure I'm going to get let go today. And she was like, yeah, me too. And we both got let go. It was really weird.
Wow. Yeah.
But I already had a plan in place. I felt totally comfortable with where I was with my next move, where I was financially. Everything kind of fell into place. We had just signed the lease for our studio 6 days before. It was like every sign pointed to like, it's not going to get any better than this. This is your time to go. Like, just do it and feel comfortable with it. But talking to your parents, and with the first instinct for them, it's like, well, how are you going to pay for shit? Sorry, I didn't know if I could. I don't know if I could say that. How are you going to pay for stuff? It's like I got it all figured out. Like, I feel pretty comfortable. But the panic I heard when I first told them was. It was very loud.
Well, and so was there a process of like, hey, calming their kind of their fears a little bit?
Yeah, telling them. I mean, because I had a well-paying job. I mean, I was leaving a pretty high-paying job. I worked in investment banking for 9 years. I was a vice president in the firm, and so I was leaving a pretty well-paying job, and I knew that going into what I was going into, running a fitness studio, was going to be a pretty big pay cut, and ended up being probably a little worse than I expected. But it worked. I was prepared financially. And once I was able to express that I had thought through all this stuff, right? It wasn't just like, hey, I was leaving, no plan, and just instant panic on my end. I was pretty calm as I was going through it. And I think after they realized like I had a plan, I had money. And then once people started to see like the business I was running that I left for, it all kind of made sense. I've been fascinated or passionate about fitness since I was a teenager. It was actually what I really wanted to do as I was kind of deciding whether or not to go to college. And then second, deciding on what I wanted to focus on when I got to college. Fitness was always like front of mind for me. But for reasons that I mean, like money reasons from other people that were telling me like, hey, it's not as, you're going to struggle to make money. I wanted to go into physical therapy. I thought that'd be a little better. I had people telling me like, well, oh great, you're going to be taping ankles for the rest of your life. It was like, man. And as a 17-year-old, listening to all that from 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, parents, family members, parents of friends, it's like, it's really hard for a 17-year-old to kind of buck all that. You know what I mean? So I was just like, yeah, maybe they're all right. And I chose my major based on just kind of an offhand suggestion from my dad. And that's how I ended up on the career path I was on. It was like, not much thought from me, just because I don't know. I didn't know. I just had no idea. And there's so much emphasis put on that decision about what you're going to study and what do you want to be when you grow up. And if I thought about that now, it's like, I would not have placed so much emphasis on that decision. I mean, everything worked out really well, and I have no complaints, no regrets, but that decision does not affect your entire life, and you can change it. It doesn't mean because you chose one path that you are cemented there for the rest of your life like that. It was just something that I didn't grasp as a teenager. And I don't know if many people did. I'm sure some people were like, okay, I really want to study this. I want to do this. Maybe some people have done that. I was not one of them. I was just like, you should major in this. And I was like, okay. I was like, fine.
So, I mean, now looking back, I mean, now being a 35, 40-year-old guy, what
42.
filter 42. So, yeah, I mean, being that guy now, like what filter would you have like listened to that advice? Cause I mean, I think I similarly had similar advice, and you kind of, their fears kind of get put onto you. It's like, you gotta do the safe route. You gotta only do that. What, brings security. And now how would you look at it? How would you get kind of like discern for yourself what makes sense?
I would be curious to know, like I said, I have no regrets. Everything worked out really well, and I'm happy with where I'm at and what I did and what I've learned. But if I were telling this to someone who was me at 18 now, it's like, pay attention more to what you enjoy doing. What do you like doing? Because I think there's a couple things there. So sometimes like what you really enjoy doing is not going to be considered like an easily employable route, right? So I was just talking to somebody yesterday who chose English because she enjoyed English classes. And I was like, yeah, it's a little more of a less kind of more difficult employable route, except if you want to be a teacher or an academia or something, or a writer. Other than that, it's probably difficult to find a job. But the other thing I would love to know how things would have worked out for me on the other end is because if you were choosing, I firmly believe if you are choosing a career path purely for money, you will tire of it. I don't know when you will tire of it. It's 100% certainty you will tire of it. Either you'll be prepared to make a move, or you'll just suffer until it's time to retire. And that's kind of the two paths that you have if you choose a career purely for money. Now, on the other hand, that might be financially safe. On the other hand, if you choose something that you enjoy, you have the opportunity, at least the potential, to be the best at whatever you choose to do. Like, for instance, if I went into physical therapy or whatever, fitness related, if the passion or the curiosity or the interests or the desire to do that activity or that career field, you will have like an unlimited amount of energy to kind of explore different avenues within that field. And you could stumble upon something that you will be the best at that will make you a lot of money or fulfill you, whatever you deem as kind of your measurement for success. I think if you choose a career path purely for money, you don't have that other element. I'm not going to sit around and try to be the best in accounting. I didn't like it. I hated it. It was like, I couldn't sit around and like read accounting stuff in my free time. Whereas if I chose something in fitness or whatever area related to that, I would have more of a desire to spend more time learning and kind of exploring, where I just think you lose that if you choose a path purely for money.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thrive Marriage Lab. If you want your marriage to thrive, this is a great opportunity to you, because strong marriages are the bedrock of strong churches, organization, families, and community. This is a 12-month pathway for any of you that are looking to really have weekly engagement with experienced marriage counselors, not just one, but many. So go to restory.life/thrive to get on the waiting list for this great program that starts in April. That's restory.life/thrive. And make sure you put the word Forge in the promo code to receive a discount on your monthly fee. Now, back to the episode. Yeah. And so, I mean, for my listeners out there who are probably like you, they're in that 9 to 5, grinding it out, like, God chose this for the wrong reasons, and they're thinking about their exit, you know, what's probably step one to really kind of get that ball rolling? I mean, you kind of hit on like things you're excited about, but what's maybe something else? Yeah. I
personally think it's securing the finances, making sure your spending is in check, making sure you have a goal to at least have 6 months of savings in the bank in cash.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And figuring out, or at least having an idea of people you could reach out to. And this is, I'll kind of bucket these last two under like your fail safe, your like eject button, like a network of people that you can reach out to get another job if you need to, if your money runs out, what you're trying to do doesn't work. And kind of, and focusing on that. Cause I think if you can make the unknown like less unknown, like, hey, what am I going to do if this runs out? It just kind of eases your mind a bit. And if you're focused purely on like not running out of money, you're not in the right mindset to kind of build a new business or whatever it is you choose to do, or a new service, or make a new product, whatever it is you want to do. You're just not in the best mindset to do that. You're operating out of a fear position, which is not going to be best for you to kind of be productive in that area. So I think those are kind of the top ones. Figuring out what you want to do is probably a pretty difficult exercise, and one that I didn't do. So I often have like ways to help people run through some exercises to at least get them started or get them pointed in the right direction, to figure out what you truly are interested in, what your experiences have been, and where your interests lie. So I call it like find your intersection, your skills, your interests, your experience, sprinkled in with some people you know and some networking will get you a good starting point as to what you can do. And I often try to get people to think outside of anything corporate related, because usually what I'll experience is like somebody's been in a job for 10 years and you ask them what they want to do next. And it's like, I'm going to do X, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I keep saying accounting or finance because that's what I worked in. Yeah. But it's like project management or whatever it is, engineering. So like, I just want to do that, but in a freelance capacity. I was like, okay, that'll get you more time and might get you the money that you want, that you're used to now. But if it's something deep inside that you don't like about that field, it's going to kind of resurface in another way. I like to think of it as like, you're just jumping from one frying pan to another. So if I went off and did accounting, I was like, this would be miserable. Yeah. I'd be in the same position. I'd have more free time maybe, and maybe I'd get paid a little differently, but the same feelings would come up. So it's really focusing on what you like to do first. And I try to have people, if they can, if it's feasible, to let themselves kind of like breathe a little bit if they leave their job, if they get let go, because it allows your mind to expand a little bit and think of other things and not just think purely within. I like to think of it, you're in this corporate box, and if you don't do anything to get out of it, you're going to think your only opportunities are within that, which is just not true. I mean, some people have made like complete jumps into completely different things afterwards. I mean, I'm one of them. So I know it's possible to do. But that's kind of where I would start. Money would be number one for sure.
Yeah. And so I think you made a good point there. Like, to get yourself in that clear headspace where you can think creatively about what you would do, you probably need that cushion, that 6-month cushion.
For sure.
So,
I mean, 6 months is usually the minimum I recommend because, and that's for people that are kind of like, are comfortable with risk. Now, if you have people that are a little more risk averse, I usually recommend even more, because it's very difficult to get something started where you're at a point where you can replace a salary in 6 months. I mean, depending on what level you are, if you're working for 10, 12 years and you're in a high paying field, like it's some pretty high hurdle, like expectations to have to think you're going to come out and start a new business.
Yeah.
Not related to what you were doing and have it making 6 figures in 6 months. Like it's possible, but it's not likely. It's not very likely.
Yeah. So it's almost like, first pull back on your expectations.
Yes.
Plan for, have that cushion. But because it's interesting as I studied stress and anxiety, how that shuts off the problem solving part of your brain, the creativity part of your brain. So like if you want new things to come, like it's gonna be hard if you're worried about, finances. So
you're basically in you're in survival mode. It's like, what do I have to do to survive? And that's all you're thinking of. It's like, there's no room for anything else in there. Like literally nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of stumbled upon what I'm doing now by doing that very thing, just kind of letting myself go and do what I enjoy doing. And that's how I got into my coaching now. I was after I left my job, after I got let go from my job, and we opened the fitness studio. The fitness studio we had to close after I think 4 years. We shut it down. Just was not enough to support 2 men in New York City. Just wasn't enough money. So it didn't make sense to keep it open as much as we loved it. After that, I felt like I didn't really want to be in New York anymore. Like I had nothing tying me there. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to go travel a little bit. And I got rid of all my stuff. I let my apartment lease run out and I basically just hit the road with a couple of backpacks. And my only objective was to go find really cool spaces to work out outside in whatever country I was in. And I was sharing content about that almost every day. And after I started kind of sharing that content, people were asking me questions less about the fitness, more about my lifestyle and like what I was doing for work and all that stuff. And that's when I really started to like think about, well, man, I could help people kind of figure this stuff out. It took me 11 years to do it, but now I have the benefit of hindsight and I could help people do it in a lot less time, because I really wish that the things that I teach people and review with people, I really wish I had that framework in my head when I went into my job, because it's much easier to have that plan. And I think people should always have like a plan B, something brewing in their head, because if you get too complacent in a corporate job, I mean, you're literally 2 words away from not having that job. So it makes sense to at least have something that you're doing. And it's the kind of things that I wish I had gone into this job with in my head. And that's what I like to help people do. And I can help them condense that time frame from 11 years to maybe 1 or 2 based on depending on their financial situation. Like if they come to me with $50,000 in debt, of course you're a lot further away from leaving your job than somebody who's got $100,000 in the bank. Like, it's just a situation.
Right. So I to back up a little bit, I think this is really interesting. Because I know you created a plan for people where it's almost like they feel more confident, where failure isn't as part of the equation. All right. But I do want to back up and just like, how important was it, the failing, or maybe you don't see it as a failure, but how it didn't work out with the fitness studio, and what'd you learn from that and really helped you in the next kind of, next 11 years of your life?
I think, great question. I think that there's a couple of things that really stand out for me there. One of them was I was so excited to work for myself in a field that I loved, that there was some things that I kind of ignored or didn't really see. I don't really recall exactly, but one of them was just like there was no freedom I had to be and what I mean by that was like, had to be in New York City. I couldn't go anywhere else. It was me and my business partner. So basically it was like, hey man, I'm going to go on vacation for 5 days. And you had to make sure the other guy was there. We were owner operators. Like we didn't go hire a staff of 10 people to run this for us. We would have shut down in 6 weeks if that were the case. We were able to keep ourselves open because we taught most of the classes. And so that was one thing. Like I was always beholden to basically the schedule of other people and the location of where I was, the brick and mortar store. Yeah. So that was one. And the other one was that, just really figuring out, kind of related to that, figuring out what you want. And if you're in a position where you can kind of plan for this without an abrupt end, like mine felt abrupt because I got let go, but I had been planning for it. But I think I was just so excited to get out and have something that was going to be my own. And I don't suggest that people should shy away from that if they have something exciting. If there's a couple of things that are less than ideal, like being tied to New York City was less than ideal for me, but the chance to operate a business on my own with a good friend of mine and in an area, a field that I loved, like I wouldn't change anything about it. Except of course that we had 10 more studios and it was maybe still open, but I truly love that. That was like the one thing I didn't want to end. It was like, I saw that being my last thing, but it didn't work out. Yeah. So I think just thinking about what it is you want day to day, like where do you want to be? Where do you want to live? What do you want to be doing? How do you want to spend your time? And really focusing on what those answers are for you. And it wasn't an exercise that I did. And so now again, having the benefit of hindsight, I can help other people do that. So at least if they're choosing what it is they want to do, they can kind of put as many restrictions on it as they want and or take as many restrictions off as they want. So they're not tied to a location. They're not in meetings if they don't want to be in meetings. They're not working with corporations if they don't want to work with corporations. Like there's a lot of things that people can think through that they can basically create your job, your ideal role. And that's kind of what I say. Like, let's help you create your ideal work. Like you are creating it yourself, and I'm going to help you get a job that you love without interviewing cover letters or resumes. Like that's kind of what I say. And so you're going to create the job. You're going to create the job. We're going to create the job ourselves for you. Like, so why not get as specific as you want with what you're going to create?
Yeah. So I just thought that'd be a really good point because you hit it well. Like sometimes you just got to take the leap and figure it out. And like you learn about yourself. Like you said, it's not really failure, but I think so many people aren't willing to take the leap because they're afraid it's not going to work out perftly. And of course it's not, right?
Rarely anything does.
Right.
It's like after that, and the easy way that I think about this is like, if I think back to when I was 22 or 23 and just starting out my corporate work, my career, if someone had told me, okay, at 42, you're going to be single in an apartment in Amsterdam, running your own business from anywhere you want in the world, I'd have been like, you're nuts. There's no way I'm going to be, 100%. I'm going to be a senior director of J&J running this accounting department. I mean, that's, and nothing goes to plan. It's like you can set yourself in a direction, but there's very few times where I think it's going to play out exactly as you planned. So embrace the idea that you're not going to just do this one thing and that things are going to change and you're going to have to make some adjustments along the way. So,
yeah. So what are some of the obstacles that a lot of your clients are coming up against when they do, I keep using Take the Leap because that's the name of your program. So I hope I'm giving you a plug, but that's what it is. It really is taking the leap, right?
Yeah. So tell me if I'm sitting in front of a light or a window. I was hoping it was going to keep it light enough for me this whole time. If it's too dark, let me know and I can get a light over here. I don't know if you show video for the podcast or not.
Yeah, I do a little bit, but you should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the obstacles as I view them, and as I've heard other people kind of say, and as I look at the questions and the things that we go through within the program, it always comes down to these three for me. If I can make them as simple as possible, it's money, work, meaning what am I going to do, and fear. What's going to happen? I don't know where this is going to end up. What if it fails? Like those are the top three. Or if I had to bucket everything specifically into larger groups, it would be those three: money, work, and fear, mindset. I usually say, because having a paycheck disruption is a pretty scary thing for anybody, no matter if you've been working for a couple of years or 15 years. Like, actually, my aunt, who works in a corporate job, she's going to be 60 next year. Yeah. She's afraid of her. She got enough money to retire. Yeah. And she's afraid because she doesn't know what she's going to do without the regular biweekly bank account top up. She's just so paralyzed by that thought that she's not ready to leave yet. I'm trying to get her into leaving, and I think she will soon. I'll have her listen to this. Be like, Nancy, you can retire.
Well, it is one of the more addicting things on the planet, right? Is a salary.
It is. It really is. And it's like getting people off of that is very difficult to do. And I mean, it was difficult for me at first too. And it's like when you were running the studio, and there were some months where we were able to split $7,000 between the two of us, and there were other months where we lost $3,000. We're like, shit, what the hell are we gonna do this month? Like it's like you can tell based on what season it is how the studio is going to do. So there were months where we didn't take anything home either, and it's a scary thing. It's like, what am I going to do? But if you're planned, if you have a proper kind of like financial outlook in place, and you know that your spending is in check, you are not spending money. I say stupidly, but that's probably not the right way, in a distracting way where you're spending on things you don't need. I mean, there's really, the key there, I think, is to boil it down to the essentials to make your runway as long as you can make it. That's the way I look at it. So expenses that are not going to add anything to your life, or that are not necessities when you're in that situation, I think helps. And just having that cushion in place in cash in case anything. I keep saying in cash because people ask me all the time, like, when should I start investing? And I'm very adamant about, like, I have like an order of operations. If you have debt, pay it off. And then non-mortgage debt, it's a very tall order to have someone say, okay, pay off your mortgage before you invest. It doesn't make any sense. Pay off your high cost debts if you have any of that. Student loans, I would suggest too. Save 6 months of cash. It may be more if you are kind of a little more averse to risk, and then start investing. Because I mean, if you were out of a job, right? You were working, you were building something on your own, and you have $50,000 to your name to last you for, let's say you have to last you a year. If your expenses are roughly $4,000 a month, which is not terribly high. I mean, if you're in New York City, it's probably pretty average. So you have a year. If your money is invested and exposed to market volatility, and you have a period like COVID where your savings drop by 50% in 6 months, that's going to panic people, like, to no end. So that's why I recommend, like, look, at least do 6 months where it's just cash. Yeah, you get beat up on inflation, but it's not nearly as bad as losing 50% of your money in a bad market drop. Yeah. That's kind of my take on that. But getting your that savings cushion just gives you options. Like, options give you confidence. Like, if you don't have options, then it's like you feel like you're making decisions out of fear or necessity.
So I'm kind of curious, Brian, what was the hardest lifestyle change for you?
The hardest lifestyle change, I mean, probably stability, a little more stability. I mean, and again, I was in a well-paying job, so it was hard to leave that. And I guess the idea of, I mean, I bought a lot of things that I didn't need, and I was a little more into things that I didn't really need to have a happy day or a happy life. Yeah. So like being at a point where it was just like, spend money on anything, like, it doesn't matter, was kind of switching away from that is is tough because you really want to be conservative with when you first leave a job like that, and being more aware of what you're spending. But I don't look at that as a bad thing now. Like I live a very simple life, and it's on purpose. Like I realized like a long time ago that there was just things I didn't need or I didn't want, and it has made my life a lot simpler. And that's the way I like it. I mean, I don't want a house here and a house there and different cars and other stuff. Just like, I want flexibility. I want to be able to go somewhere at the drop of a hat and go enjoy my time somewhere else. And I realized that I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to do that anyway because of the job I had. So it was like, okay, I'm willing to give that trade up because again, I took the career path purely for money. So I grew tired of it. I just, it came at about probably probably 30, 31.
Yeah.
I started to feel like I got to do something because I was seeing guys that were 10 years ahead of me and I knew I didn't want that lifestyle. I it was just like, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad for them. I mean, they were okay with it. I didn't care for it for me. So I knew I had to make a move at some point.
Yeah. It's interesting. Because I think you're hitting on a point, whether people leave their job or not. I think you've got principles there of like, hey, take stock of what you really don't need. Yeah. You know, like, and then really think back, what do you actually really want, you know, in life? And that's great. At the end of the day, it's like, I want to go somewhere where I have the flexibility to drop a hat. Yeah. I mean, that's just great. Yeah. That's just what gives me life. That's what gets me excited about what I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a social question because I don't know how much you study. Like you talked about guys 10 years ahead of you, because I've kind of been in the same way of like, and I think it is more of the generation ahead of us. But yeah, what have you kind of studied about the midlife crisis and all that, right?
It's kind of interesting. So midlife crisis, that is, I mean, I can speak from my kind of thoughts.
Because you're combating it in my mind, like you were creating an active plan to combat the midlife crisis, which is probably less and less of our generation, but it was full on. Yeah. You know, I would say with baby boomers and
for sure. I mean, for sure. I mean, I feel like I don't know what we consider. I mean, I'm in middle age. There's no argument there. How old are you, by the way?
37.
37. Yeah. So I feel like I'm in middle age. I don't feel like I'm at a crisis point yet, but there are things that I'm much more attuned to now, I would say. Mortality is one for sure. It's like looking at your time in a much more scrutinized way and just not willing to put up with things that don't bring me joy. It's just, I don't consider that like, I don't know if that's like a result of the crisis of a crisis mindset. I don't know. I didn't really feel anything when I turned 40, like nothing that was like an existential crisis for me. It was like, okay, I'm okay. I felt good. I was actually at 40. I was probably in the best shape I've ever been in my entire life. And I was having a pretty good time. I was traveling around. I felt pretty good. I think probably as I get into, I would imagine as I get into late 40s, that would change a bit. But I think the way, like you mentioned, combating it, I think is just being very intentional with what you want and really making sure you're spending your time doing what you want to do. And I go back to work because so much of my time was spent doing that in my 30s, my early 30s, particularly because that's when I was still in my corporate career. And just thinking about the percentage of my waking hours that were geared towards something that I didn't enjoy doing. So whether that's actually working, whether it's commuting to working, getting ready to go to work, coming home and decompressing from work, stressing about work because you're literally one email away from your weekend getting ruined. It's like the amount of my waking hours that were dedicated to that, I would say the amount of my waking energy, right? Mental, physical, it was just so huge. And I was like, man, I don't know if this is the best way to spend like the best years of my life. And I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait to do the things I want to do until I'm 60, when my prime physical years are behind me. Now, I don't think that 60 is still, I think, a young, like, able-bodied person and still can do everything you want to do. Because my dad is in his early 60s. I got a couple uncles that are retired that are 60, and they're still able to do everything they want to do. I didn't want to wait that long. I just didn't want to wait until then. So figuring out a way where I could have a little balance between work, between enjoyment, between flexibility and freedom. It was just time for me to kind of figure out a way to make that work for me now, and not wait until I was 65 or whatever the age is that most people retire at. So I think that helps combat the midlife crisis feeling, because you're more of your time is yours. I wonder if that's a good, I wonder if how that affects the percentage of men that are, say, 40 to 50 or 55, how that affects their view of if they're going through a midlife crisis. I'm so curious. Like, if you're in a career that you find fulfilling, or you're in a job that you're not totally happy with, like, I wonder if that changes the kind of the mindset, whether it's just crisis or not crisis. You know what I mean? I wonder if that has any bearing on it. I would kind of think it almost has to, because I'm sure there is this feeling of like the clock is ticking away. Like, either I'm just going to let it tick, or I'm going to try to fight it or do something to change something, you know?
And most of them, and that's, I think I guess the big issue with midlife crisis, most guys end up choosing the destructive thing.
Like what?
Like drinking too much, having an affair on their wife, buying something that they can't afford, right?
Nice sports car,
so, I mean, obviously there are degrees to that, right? Or they blow up, just blow up their life. I'm done with this, like, you know. So
get divorced, go be single. I'm sure. I mean, there's definitely a lot of that behavior that you see, especially with people that are a little ahead of you. So
I think there's something we really like. What you're hitting on is like there's something that we're missing before that happens, right? That is just a symptom of something before that, and I think it is some of the questions that you're answering. I think that's just a good plug for Brian. You just kind of tell us about your brand and what you're doing. SimpleManGuide.com for those who want to check that out. But Brian, I just would love to tee you up and just share a lot of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, sure. So my whole goal or mission is to help people find work they enjoy and stop doing work they don't like. And help them understand that there are options that they can choose between and that they can create for themselves. And I have a coaching program geared exclusively to that. It's a 4-month mastermind where there are some one-on-one calls to go through specific aspects of that transition. Like I talked about earlier, like work, money, mindset, things to work through those kind of roadblocks to help you come up with answers. There's a group component to it with access to anyone else that's in the group at the same time. There's a digital course involved too, which kind of provides the structure. Like, for instance, if we're talking about money, which I often do, step number one, it's like, okay, when you sign up, it's like, all right, you're going to go complete these modules in the course. When you're done the modules, set up a one-on-one call with me. We'll go through your financial plan. Boom, done. We move on to the next thing. And it's a 4-month thing where we're working together to get you in the position where you feel comfortable and ready to leave and have something. The goal at the end is to have something that you are building when you are done the program. Like, so you started building something when you were done the program.
Wow, that's great, man. So where can people find you, Brian?
SimpleManGuide.com is my website. So it's GUIDE, Simple Man Guide. Instagram also, Simple Man Guide, and you can find me on LinkedIn under Brian D. Gallagher.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a blast talking to you. So
thanks so much, Cartwright. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for listening to the Men Are Forged podcast. If you enjoyed this interview, I recommend going over to Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribing. There's more great content, short clips, videos, even some full interviews of just more content about how we are shaping men into leaders. So you can go there to the Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribe.